So what comes to mind when you think of being surprised?
Well, just the first thing that comes to mind is work. When we make an extra milkshake, we take it to someone, say surprise and delight. Hello and welcome to the Resilient Lineage podcast, where we reflect on the past, anticipate the future, and discover what God is up to today. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Milo.
Yeah.
So you make extra milkshakes.
So,
did we talk about that last episode?
No, we talked about it one-on-one. Yeah, because we thought we were going to do all of this in one episode.
That's right.
No, so at work, let's say, I don't know, we made an extra milkshake. We'll take it to the drive-thru.
Or like when you're making milkshakes, you have extra,
Just
like you made too much in the container for like one milkshake, so you have enough for two. Is that...
No, that's not how.
Oh, that's not how it works?
That's not how that works. Sometimes.
So how do you make an extra milkshake?
So sometimes, like, you'll, on the dessert screen, you have a screen that's for front counter that goes to, like, carryouts and dine-ins and mobile orders, and then you have, like, the drive-thru, so it's all on one screen.
Olivia
so
works at Chick-fil-A from time to time.
So sometimes, like, we'll get confused, and we'll make two the same. Either one person already made it because you stepped away from your station and forgot to bump it off the screen.
Got it.
And then you make it, and then we have an extra milkshake.
Got it.
So usually it happens once a day. But
so once a day, someone is delighted with a, hey, you lucky person, you get a free milkshake.
Yeah.
Have you ever, when you've gone to give a milkshake, have you ever thought, I'm not going to give it to you, I'm going to give it to somebody else?
Sometimes.
And what led you to make that decision?
Okay. Sometimes I'm okay, let's say someone's like super upset or angry about something. We have an extra milkshake. I'm going to go give it to you because
it'll cool their tempers.
Yeah. Chick-fil-A has like a motto that comes from the Sermon on the Mount. I don't remember which part of it. But it's like go the extra mile when it's like talking about if someone says 1 mile, go with them too. So to just have a positive experience. So if someone's having a really rough day, like I'll be like, hey, like we made an extra. Would you like it? And then they're like, yeah. And then we're supposed to say surprise and delight and then walk away.
Surprise and delight.
So that's like when I mean, it's just the lingo.
Yeah, that's what came to mind.
Yeah.
So this is part 2 of we're looking at this overall stewardship kind of like how do we practice good stewardship? And we've talked about a handful of things. We've talked about, like, in general, what does it look like to embrace stewardship? Looked at, who kind of the role of money in our lives and making sure that we're stewarding that well. That was episode 52. And then we talked about time and how we steward our time and how do we do that well. And then last week we talked about stewarding the adventure. And we only got halfway through our conversation and we knew that was going to happen as we were kind of filling out the notes. We realized there's a little bit more here than what we want to chew off in one podcast. Yeah. Or one episode. So this is part 2 of that. So if you haven't listened to episode 54, encourage you to go back and listen to that episode because you can listen to this one. You're not going to miss a lot, but there's things that we kind of set up in that one that we're not going to set up in this particular episode. So if you have listened to it, great, you're good to go. But we're basing this off of this idea that Matthew 6 verse 33, Jesus says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And this, I've been thinking about that in the context of it's kind of a call or it's an invitation to adventure. What does it look like to wake up each day, to set the posture of the way I'm using my money and my time and the way I'm managing my boundaries and relationships and responsibilities, to align behind this idea of my whole life is in pursuit of God's kingdom. Like, how do I live that well? How do I live it in a way that honors him, that is a blessing to others in a way that's, we kind of think in those 4 dimensions. Righteousness, right? That my relationship with God is right. My relationship with others is right. My relationship with myself is in a good place. My relationship with creation is where it needs to be, that I'm moving in these 4 directions, or I'm at least at minimum growing in those areas, because, there's always going to be something that comes up. So we've been talking about how do we do that well? How do we position ourselves to step into this adventure that the Lord has for us. And kind of the big idea that we have for this.
Yeah, is if a person pursues God's kingdom first, then God has a great adventure for that person. However, this adventure can be missed if one neglects important moments and succumbs to destructive influences and chooses not to grow in stewardship.
And that kind of, there's sort of this, neglecting moments, succumbing to destructive influences, and choosing not to grow in stewardship. But, as we're kind of have 4 points through this, and each of the points sort of wrestles with those dynamics.
Yeah.
So last week we looked at what we can anticipate on the road of adventure, and we're going to continue that today. But the first 2 things we looked at
is like perceived danger and potential conflict, and then places that are remote and unfamiliar.
Yeah, and so that's kind of on the negative side of the house. Mm-hmm. Like hey, we're not trying to sugarcoat this. There is perceived danger, there is potential conflict, and the reason why we're saying perceived danger, years ago when I was a kid and in church, I remember hearing a preacher say, and then it's one of those phrases that once you hear one person say it, then you start hearing a lot of other people say it, or at least the first time you hear it. And the phrase was, the safest place to be is in the center of God's will. That if God has called you into what appears to be a dangerous situation, if that's where God wants you to be, then that's the safest place for you to be. And not safe meaning you won't suffer, and safe meaning you won't experience pain or loss, whether that's of loss of relationships or loss of your own life, or it doesn't mean it's divorced of those things. It means that is the place where God's presence will be experienced. That's a place where his wisdom will be known. That's where he will strengthen you, right? Is in the center of his will. And so this idea that we're not saying that pursuing God isn't dangerous. It can be, but it's the best place for us to be is in seeking first his kingdom. There's that great line in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in the book of Chronicles of Narnia, where Lucy, there's these 4, if you're not unfamiliar with the story, there's a movie you can go watch on, I think it's on Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. But you can, it's these 4 children, takes place during World War II. They're staying at their uncle's house. I think it's an uncle. And one of them finds this wardrobe in this room that she goes through, and the wardrobe is like a gateway into this other world called Narnia. And in this other world called Narnia, there's a wicked ice queen, and the animals talk, and like it's this fantastical world. Well, as she's in that world, she's talking with Mr. and Mrs. Beaver, who have invited her into their den, and they're telling her that there's rumors that Aslan is on the move, and Aslan's the great king, and Aslan is this lion, right? And he represents sort of everything that is good and moral and pure and authoritative, and he's the one that will overthrow this ice queen. And so as they're describing, they're saying Aslan is on the move, Lucy says, well, who's Aslan? And they describe, he's this lion, and and she asks the question, is he safe? To which the reply is, safe? Why, no, but he's good. And I love that idea that the Lord does not call us to live a safe life. He calls us to live a good life. Yeah. And there's a fantastic book, if anybody wants to read it, by Mark Buchanan called Your God is Too Safe. And he wrestles with this, how culturally we're very much living in this place where safety has become sort of the predominant way of evaluating the legitimacy or my responsibility towards something. If it's unsafe, I don't have to do it. And so when we say that there's perceived danger, the safest place to be is in the center of God's will. It's using that word safe in the context of kingdom values and priorities and principles, right?
That's good.
That I'm not gonna assess risk above faithful obedience. We talked about that last week, right? We're not going to, when we talk about the remote places and the unfamiliar things, I'm not going to let those things scare me away from seeking first the kingdom of God, stepping into this adventure he has for me. Okay, that was last week.
Yeah.
And if you want to listen to that, obviously, I just want to make sure that I never want to be accused of either being all doom and gloom and it's hard and, grind it out and,
it's a tough life.
Yeah. Just follow Jesus and trust him. And, I don't want to, that or the other side, which is like, it's all amazing and it's incredible. And this is wonderful. And how, it's perfect. And it's like, well, no, it's like that's
not the life God calls us to.
Exactly. It's not like that either. Right. Yeah. There's this, it's all of it. Okay, so with this big idea that how do we pursue God's kingdom? What should we anticipate on this road of adventure that God has us on? Okay, so for today, we're going to look at the follow-on points.
The two happier ones.
Yeah, and the first one is
less gloomy. This week, we're going to be talking about experiences that will surprise and delight us.
So you can expect, if you're on this adventure with God, he's going to surprise and delight you. Hence the question at the top of the podcast, what when you think of surprise and delight?
Yeah, just something that comes out of nowhere, right? So there's a decision that we have to make with that. And last week, it's the same outline that we did this in, where we have 2 points, and then the decisions we have to make and the attitudes that we face, and then how you grow. Yeah. So this week, surprise and delight. You have a decision to seize control or trust that God is in control.
How good are you at that?
Well, whoa. Okay. Okay. I think recently, this last year, I have had a lot of opportunities to seize control of things. Given I'm not at home, so I have control over what food I eat. At college, I have control over my time. I have control over who I hang out with. I have control over... Whoa. These are things that I have taken into control. Do I control these things?
Yeah.
No.
You hang on to the impression that you are in control.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me just rephrase.
Qualify that.
I'm not like a man behind the curtain controlling these things, but I think... the temptation is to just be like, oh, I have control over my entire life right now, and I'm not dependent on anyone, which that's the temptation. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, I still have to trust in God. Living at home, it kind of filtered through, right? You and mom led our family, and we depended on you guys to trust that God was leading our family in the right way. Versus I have to make this huge life decision. Mm-hmm. So that filter's gone. So it's just me and God now. We're just chilling, and the mom and dad are on the side. So if I need support, they're my little floaties.
And by sides, I mean I come to their house every weekend and eat their food.
Okay. The call out was crazy. Yeah, so we have the decision to seize control or trust that God is in control. And God's going to surprise us in his timing with things. Recently, it's funny how God can just put an impression on people's hearts to then just reach out to you. Mm-hmm. And there's very few people, I mean, you've mentioned this before, that will pause and take time out of their day to check up on you spiritually. Mm-hmm. And I could count people on my hands who do that for me. Mm. And it's always at the perfect moment. So this week I got reached out by a close friend of mine. 2 people actually. And they were just how's life? And then I just tell them how life's going. And then they're like, okay, great. How's God with you right now? And I'm like, okay. Should have seen it coming. Yeah. But it was one of those things where it's okay, I need to just release these things that I'm wrestling with. To then just be okay.
And I think sometimes the assumption can be, if I give up control today, then I'm good to go for tomorrow. Mm-hmm. It's no, each day you've got to wake up and give up control. And I think there's in the Old Testament, one of the things we see is there's lots of things that the Lord has that are symbols of he's been in control. He's guiding them. He's leading them, whether it was the Ark of the Covenant or the 12 stones that they stacked after they crossed the Jordan River, or, you can kind of go down the line of these symbols that reminded Israel that God's in control. Yeah. And I think people learn in a bunch of different ways. And, one of the things I'm convinced of is that the Lord wants to meet you where you're at. And he wants to remind you that he's in control and he's doing things that you just need to focus on.
Yeah.
Because I think there's the attitudes, right? So the decision to seize control or trust that God is in control. And I would encourage folks that if you want to be surprised and delighted by God, then you can't be in control. You have to be able to let go of that. Because, there's people that if you are in control and you're surprised, then it won't be delight, because now you're frustrated, now you're annoyed, even if the surprise was a good thing, even if the surprise was unexpected. But if you're willing to sort of just step into whatever moments the Lord has and sort of learn to listen to his voice and his promptings and move forward with that, you will be delighted in ways that you never anticipated. Should I tell our chair story? That was a surprise and delight.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock to like 25 years.
2003.
2000, well, further back than that, 2000. Like when I was, so your mom and I, before we had kids, we lived in north central Ohio. We would drive down to this area in northeast Columbus that had like a big fancy mall. And they had a good restaurant and a good movie theater. And so we would go down there because it was a way to sort of get out of our town. And we knew if we were down there, the chances of us seeing anybody we knew were really low. So there was some anonymity that we had, because where we were pastoring was a really small town. And so you'd see people all the time that knew us and that we knew, which was fine. But sometimes you just want anonymity. So we would go down there, and anytime we'd go to the mall, we'd go to Pottery Barn. And when we'd go into Pottery Barn, I can spend like 8 minutes in Pottery Barn and I'm good to go, right? Because the vast majority of the items in there I find highly overpriced, and at least for our budgetary constraints. But your mom likes to walk around and look around and get ideas and all kinds of things. And so she would do, of course, I can be in there for 8 minutes. She can be in there for an hour and a half. So when I'd be done, I'd go sit in this chair. And this chair, like I always thought, man, if I ever ran into a lot of money, this is the chair I would want. And it's called the Manhattan Roll Arm Leather Chair.
I'm dead.
And it's this wonderful chair with like, the leather is like super soft and it's comfortable, and it like, when you find a chair that you feel like fits your body well and all of these things. I loved this chair. But then it was like $1,200 for this chair. And I was like, well, we can't afford that. Yeah. Like that's just way beyond our price point. Well, it was, so I have that chair in mind. Well, then we were at a store called Meijer. And when we were going through Meijer one day, there was this, it was like after the holidays or something, there was this section where they said 80% off this furniture. And there was a chair that design-wise, it was very similar to this Manhattan chair that I really liked. And we looked at it and had an ottoman, and I was like, this is perfect. It was made out of vinyl. It wasn't made out of leather, but it looked really cool. And it fit us really well, just like the Manhattan chair did. And so we went to the folks and we said, hey, is this part of the 80% off? And they're like, yeah. And I said, well, how much is it? And they did the math. They're like, it's $20. So it was a surprise, right? It was a delight that here's this chair that we didn't set out to find, and it fit our budget and it fit our, the space we need, because I had like a home office and it was perfect for that. Okay. Well, fast forward 25 years, right? This chair, we still have this chair.
It's now in my dorm.
And this chair is like got claw marks on it, and the vinyl's cracking. And, a few months ago, your mom and I were talking about it. It was like, I think this is the last house this chair will be with us in. because it's kind of time to let it go. It's real ratty looking. Now, it's in a part of our house, and like we have a room over the garage, which is like my study space. It's like my man den. And so it's been great for that location. So I've been looking at chairs. I need to find a chair replacement. And again, I'm coming across chairs that, I'd like to get. And guess where I start? Guess what I still want to get?
The Pottery Barn.
Pottery Barn is still selling this Manhattan roll arm leather chair. Now, instead of $1,200, now it's a $2,300 chair, right? Because time's gone by, inflation, all that stuff. So, and we've been looking at IKEA and, places that are more within our budget, and I still haven't found anything. And anytime I found something and I started to move towards it, I just felt like God going, wait. And I was like, well, I can wait. We still have this other chair. There's nothing, there's a lot of things wrong with it, but it's fine for what it is. And so I never felt clear to move on it. And then a couple weeks ago, you and I
My mom was out of town. I was like, I'll make you dinner.
Which was great.
But I need to go grab ingredients.
So we go to the grocery store, and next to our grocery store is a thrift store. And I say, hey, why don't you go into the grocery store? I'm going to go into this thrift store just to see what they have. And when I walk in, what is right there at the front?
The Manhattan chair.
The Manhattan roll arm chair. It is gross. Like, it is filthy. Looks like somebody hawked a loogie on it. Looks like another spot somebody spilled a milkshake on it. There's all kinds of crumbs and stuff. The cushion is supposed to be 5 inches thick. It's like pancake down to like 1 inch. But the leather's in incredible shape. Like, there's nothing wrong with the leather. And I'm thinking, this can clean up really, really well. So I go to the counter and I ask the lady, I said, hey, how much for the chair? And she goes, it's $50. And I was like, take my money, right? Bring it home, clean it up, buy a new cushion, right? Because you can zip open, take out the old cushion, put in the new one so it still has the same leather, wrapped thing around it. I love this chair. And I can't believe I have this chair now. Now, my point is this. Your mom and I have a tremendous amount of uncertain things in our life right now, because I'm coming up for orders soon. Where are we going to move? Where are we going to live? What do we do with the house we currently have? Do we rent it? Do we sell it? Like, there's all of these things. And there's this tendency in me to want to grab control right now. And finding that chair accomplished a variety of things for us. One was we had this chair that we needed to get rid of, which is now in your dorm room.
Right.
Which is the great dorm chair. But now when I see that chair, like, because I was so unexpected to be able to find that. And it was so delightful to find it. And so surprising that it was God's, like, every morning, because that's where I have my devotions. Every morning when I have my devotions, it's God going, I'm in control. I got you. You don't need to seize control. Let me surprise and delight you. And I think, I'm not saying people are going to find, $2,300 leather chairs at thrift stores all the time.
Right.
But I will say that God wants to do some things in your life that you can look at, that you can see, that you can touch, you can feel, some relationships, some, emails that you get from somebody. He wants to do something in your life to surprise and delight you, but it means I have to be willing to trust him. Yeah. To trust that he's in control instead of trying to seize control. Okay, the attitude that will impede this
is a spirit of entitlement. Like, I got this.
I deserve this. Like, I could have said, I deserve a chair. I've been wanting the same chair for 20 years. I'm going to go save our money and we're going to go buy a $2,300 chair. But then what would I have been robbed of?
A $50 chair for the same thing.
In a lot of ways.
And a delight.
In some ways, it's not even about the price. It's about the surprise and delight. Yeah. Right? It's about God affirming that he's and I know he's got us, right? But sometimes we need those sort of shot in the arms that remind us. And so if we living with that spirit of entitlement. So if anybody has that, you're going to rob yourself of the spirit and delight that the Lord has for you. And then the area of stewardship we need to grow in
is we need to grow, in our stewardship with dependence on God. I'll say this real quick. An example of this is this month, all of my roommates and our friends all got a notice. The whole Regent University got a notice saying you have to turn in your housing applications for next year. And all freshmen this year that are going to be sophomores next year have to either live in the village, which is another complex down the road, not as tight-knitted as the commons that I'm in. It's more like an apartment. It was originally
like condos.
Yeah, it was originally designed for like married couples, so the layout's extremely different. Or you get a quad, that you have to apply for a quad in the commons. So you need 4 people. So all the girls have been stressing, who's going to room with who? Why do we have to submit it this time? Like, how is this going to work out? Because we're paying more now than how we're paying right now. So there's lots of uncertainty with budget. So they all come to me like, Olivia, like, I don't know if we want to be roommates next year, if we want to. I'm just like, girls, like, let's take a chill pill. Like, submit something. Like, we're supposed to submit something. But God's going to open all the doors. Because I'm at a place where I don't know if I should rent out the house with new roommates and have that and live at home, or I just live at the commons. So, or at the village. So there's like all this uncertainty. Then I'm just kind of like, you know what? I had to face this last semester coming into school, and he cleared it. So now I'm just kind of like, you know what? Let's just take a moment, like submit something, because we have to. But if things change, we're okay. Like, we're going to be with who we're supposed to be with. That doesn't mean not do anything or put plans in your mind that that's what's going to happen. But just trust that God's got this.
And what I would say is, with all that, like that dependence on God, when you come up against something that is unexpected, if my reaction is one of frustration, annoyance, those are the areas where you have entitlement, right? If you're angry, if you feel like you weren't being listened to, that's where you live with some entitlement. And that's one of the things that the Lord wants to sanctify out of us, right? That I don't need this world to validate my identity, who I am in Christ. I know I'm a child of the King. I know I'm a son. I know I'm called. I know I'm equipped. I know He's given me everything I need to live according to His will.
Yeah.
These series of events around me that may not go well. And I know this is really easy to say on a podcast. Like, it's easy to say right now, right? Living this out this is where the challenges are. But if we're going to step into this adventure that God has for us, if we're going to step into this surprise and delight, I have to be willing to shed those entitlements that crop up over time, or that people tell me I should hang on to.
Yeah.
Right? So you come up with, let's say, 4 gals to live with, and you say, this is where we want to be. And then the school comes back and is like, yeah, we're not going to give you anything you asked for. And like, well, I'm entitled to that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you gave me the option.
You actually asked me for this. And so there's like, it's pausing in those moments and going, all right, where's this coming from in my heart? And it's not to say organizations are off the hook. They need to appropriately align expectations and all that kind of stuff. That's a different conversation. But the one I'm talking about is, if we're going to step into the adventure God has for us, then I need to be aware of that spirit of entitlement, because it's going to rob me of that dependence on God. It's going to want to put that dependence on something other than God. Okay, so God wants to step into experiences that will surprise and delight us. The fourth thing that He wants us to do.
Incredible companions that share a common purpose. Sorry, I don't know why I paused like that. So dramatic. So the decision we have to make that is to choose humble smallness instead of puffed up pride. This week, I'm a part of a campus ministry. It's really cool. And they were bringing up humbleness. In the context, we're going through the tabernacle and the steps that people in the Old Testament and the priests would have to, like, how they would have to encounter God. Like, there was a very ornate and specific manner in which how they had to present themselves to God, present themselves to the people. There was like a ritual thing that you have to, like, there was an entire, so there's this very like religious, sacred process in which you have to go find God. And we were talking about the element of humbleness and how to approach Him. And the guy leading it said something that was incredibly insightful. And he said, humbleness is rooted in the word of soft ground. And he started reflecting on the soils. And we've talked about the soils earlier. I want to say it was in the teens, maybe a little less in our episodes. And if you want God to work and you want God to actually grow something sustainable and impactful in your life, it has to be rooted in the ground, like a soft ground, and like a fresh heart, like a heart of flesh. Like when in the Old Testament, when David's like, give me a new heart, it's this calloused heart that he wants God to just not just purify it, but give him something new so that God can work through that. Just like how the soft grounds, like you don't want a rocky ground where it's super callous. It's like, Lord, just drop the seeds. It's like, well, okay, God might drop the seeds in you, but are you prepared for him to drop it? And are you preparing a place for that to be cultivated and grown? So I think how this relates to stewardship, we've already broke it down, but stewardship isn't just preparing yourselves for these experiences that you might have with God, but it's these attitudes that you have to embrace. Mm-hmm. Like, despite your circumstances and despite the things that might be going on around you, there's daily attitudes that you have to go about it, and humbleness is one of them. I did a research, because I was just like, how can I sound super smart today,
I want to sound super smart.
Wikipedia.org said.
I want to sound super smart as I talk about humility.
Humility, yeah. And so humility derives from the Latin word humus. Well, technically together, it's humilitas. I don't know how you say it. I'm just going to... I should have just committed.
I thought you meant like crushed peas.
Okay. No? Humus. Is that how you say it? Humus.
I don't know. You did the research.
I did. Okay. We're going to delete that. Which means earth or ground. Humus means earth or ground.
Yeah.
And then the suffix "itus" means like a state of.
Yeah.
So together, it's being close to the ground or having a ground-like nature that is in a lowly position.
Yeah.
And that's how we get the word humility. So it's definitely counteractive to this spirit of entitlement that we talked in the last point.
Well, and I in one of my classes, my professor, I think she said it almost every week. And I think it's a really beautiful observation, which she says, everything begins as small and naive. And she talked about how when we see the birth of Christ, the anointed one, the one who's come to take us away the sins of the world, the one who comes to conquer death, the one who will reign as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. How does the story begin?
Small and naive.
Small and naive. And I think that's it's so countercultural to how we are right now, where we think the important things are the big things. The relevant things are the powerful things.
Or the things that come first.
Yeah. There's all of this sort of pomp and circumstance. Like, look at, right? It sort of is like, but everything when you take a little seed and you put it in the soft ground and you just put a little bit of water on it today and then a little bit more on it tomorrow, not too much and not too little. Like, there's this smallness to it and there's a naivete. Do you think this will actually matter over time? Yeah. Yes, I do. There's a bunch of things I'm not in control of, but if I do this consistently enough, something will happen. And so when we talk about humble smallness, we're not saying... And this is not a false humility, right? It's not a humility that, tries to be small so I can demonstrate humility, because that's still a type of pride.
Right.
It's humility that says, I'm okay being small. I'm okay being not noticed. I'm okay being overlooked. I'm okay being not considered. Why? Because who's in charge of my adventure? Who's in charge of the path I am? The Lord is. Like, I don't have to worry about all of this stuff. The Lord is the one who has set me out. He's the one that's invited me to seek first his kingdom. And he's going to take care of all this other stuff. That's in contrast to this puffed up pride, right? Which comes in and says, I deserve, I have these credentials, I should have this kind of position. I mean, Jesus, there's so many stories about that, right? Where people come in with this sort of puffed up pride, and how Jesus chooses the people that are small, chooses the people that are culturally insignificant or culturally rejected or culturally on the margins. And so when God says, so this idea of being on this adventure is going to provide me companions that share a common purpose, I want to associate with myself. I want to draw close to those folks who live with that humble smallness. And I'm not saying that they are rejecting things because they're big. I'm saying they aren't demanding things because they are big, right? They're not puffing themselves up. They're okay with who they are, and they are on this journey of pursuing God's kingdom first. Yeah. The attitude that will impede that
is a spirit of insecurity.
If you are, the places where you are insecure are the places where you will cultivate your greatest defenses. So when as you talk with somebody, or even check your own heart, if you see them getting defensive, or you find yourself getting defensive, then those are places you're insecure with. Like that, those are the soft spots in your heart, that if you feel like you have to prove yourself in a particular way, or you feel like you have to demonstrate that you're worthy to be in the room or at the table or in the conversation, like those places of insecurity, like need to be surrendered to the Lord. And I believe there's a demonic spirit that will chase after you with those things to try to have that occupy your mind. That I've got to show up at work today and let them know who's the boss. I got to go to this place and let them know, what I'm good at. Like there's always that temptation when you step into new places, right? To try to validate to people why you should be in the room, or why you should be in their company, or why they should be in your company, or whatever it is, right? And it's like none of that is part of seeking first the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
Okay. And then go ahead.
So grow in stewardship by generously honoring others. There's I'm in a relationship with my boyfriend.
That's good.
Yeah. We just celebrated 6 months.
Aww.
I know. Half a year. Isn't that crazy?
Half a year.
I know.
Has it gone quick?
Yeah. I'll never forget. It was like after like 3 months of dating, I'm like, well, we've dated so long. And then you were like telling us an example, and you were like, yeah, this couple hadn't been dating long. They were dating 6 months. And I was like, that's a really long time. It's like, that's a bold statement to say. Anyway, it has not felt that long. But every month we try to check up on each other and say, how do we need to honor each other? And how are we supposed to honor each other's convictions so we don't impede on that, but also honoring your relationship with God, and how do we need to go about that? Which I think is one of the most, impactful questions that we ask each other, because, there's always going to be different things that you have to filter through. That's like, here are my responsibilities. I need you to honor these. Because, we're not married, so it's like, you're not the priority. So here's all of our other previous responsibilities. So how do we, honor each other through that? Which I think every couple that's dating should ask each other that, despite if they're married or not. But yeah.
Well, and it's easy to honor people that help you.
That's true.
Right? It's easy to honor people that are loyal to you, that you've demonstrated loyalty to, and they've appreciated it. The hardest thing is to honor people that are for themselves or may be antagonistic against you. And if you're like, I don't know if I have to honor them. Like, well, according to Paul in the book of Romans, you do. He says, honor everybody. So how do you talk about that person? Is it dishonoring? And I'm not saying you don't, if you're asked for the facts and you're asked to paint a picture, you don't lie, right? We're not supposed to hide from the truth, but there's a way of sharing information that is honoring or dishonoring. And so part of this, are you a person of honor, in some ways isn't a question of, can people honor me? That being a person of honor is, do I give honor? Do I extend it? Do I offer it to those that are very difficult to offer it to? And I guarantee, as people are as they hear this, and the question is who is the hardest person for you to honor? Everybody has someone in mind, because there will always be that person in your life. And I think if you grow in that place or with that person, then all of these other things grow as well, right? You will grow. Your insecurities will be trusted into the Lord, and He'll strengthen you in those areas. You'll maintain that humble smallness, right? Because that's what's required to honor that person. You'll find that people are watching you, people you may not even know, and they'll go, I like how that person's lives, and they're moving in a direction I want to move in with my life, or I am moving in with my life. And so all of a sudden you find companions in unlikely places because of the way you honor other people. And I think that's in a culture right now, well, I think it's going to be like this for a while. It's been like this for a while, and I think it'll be like this for a while, in a culture that is so divided, where we want to put people in segments. We want to create categories that we put people in. What we're doing is we're really basically saying, who do I have to honor and not honor? And the Lord's going, let me make this really easy for you. Honor everybody, regardless of the category. How are you going to honor everybody? And that's a task. That's a difficult task, but it's one that, the Lord will surprise and delight you on. It can feel unfamiliar and remote. It may feel like there's potential conflict if you do that, right? It's going to expose all of these things that we've been talking about in this journey. Okay, so recap. Stewarding the adventure. We've been considering what to anticipate on the road of adventure with God. First is perceived danger and potential conflict, places that are remote and unfamiliar. We talked about that in the previous episode. And then today we talked about how we can we'll have experiences that will surprise and delight us, and
incredible companions that will share a common purpose.
Yeah.
Real quick, I think the temptation is to find a person with like a common situation, which it's not. We don't have to find those. That's not what God wants us to seek after.
Yeah, common circumstances is not equal to common purpose. Yeah. That's a really good observation.
And the temptation to be like, oh, if someone only understood what I'm going through. And it's like, okay, well, sure. Like, I don't know what that looks like. But at the same time, I don't think if you find that person who's in it, it might be beneficial.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you for chiming in.
Share, follow, rate, review this podcast. By doing that, you're going to help us get the traction that we need and let others know what they can expect.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at olivia.grace_28 or on Facebook at Olivia Curtis. You can follow my dad at x.com under Milo Curtis. Same with Facebook and Instagram. We do have a newsletter. Please sign up for that. You can do that at thisresilientsoul.com.
Each week we send out a newsletter the day the podcast come out. So you can kind of see what the latest episode's about, some other information we're pushing, as well as previous episodes. And so if you're signed up for that, thank you. We're glad you're on the list. If you're not signed up for that, go sign up for it and then share it with others. That's a great, easy email to forward and say like, hey, this is the podcast I was talking about, or things like that.
You can email us at hello@thisresilientsoul.com. Just if you have any critiques, any ways we can deepen the quality of this, please let us know. Also ideas, like if you have ideas of what you want to hear, what you're interested in.
Yeah. What's resonating.
Yeah. We will reply to you.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening.
Have a great week.